I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Guidance is not something you chase. Guidance is what is heard when the chase stops. Be still and know that I am God. The stillness is not a technique you perform to coax a result. It is the cessation of the belief that there is a result to be manufactured, a path to be wrestled into visibility by anxiety. As long as you are hunting signs, reading omens, polling your emotions, or drafting scenarios like a lawyer arguing both sides of a case, you are announcing to your own consciousness that God is absent and must be summoned. That is the noise. And in noise, even the most faithful ear cannot hear, though the shepherd's voice never ceases. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. You come to me and you say, I have options, I have pressure, and I cannot tell which way is right without anxiety and second guessing. I know that complaint. I have heard it from businessmen, from mothers, from students, from ministers. I have heard it at midnight and at breakfast. And I must answer you, not unkindly, but truthfully. You have begun at the wrong end. You have started with effects and tried to trace them backward to cause. You have started with fear of consequences and tried to stitch together a safety net out of thought. And then you wonder why the inner assurance does not arise. It does not arise because you are searching for an effect to overpower other effects, a louder trumpet to silence the clamor. But there is no power in any effect because God is all power. What is the hidden assumption? That guidance is an external signal, a lucky break, a perfectly lit feeling that erases risk. You are waiting for the dice to roll in your favor, for the inbox to ding, for the heart to surge, for the sky to part. That is still the mind asserting two powers, good outcome and bad outcome, competing for dominion over you. Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is, God. As long as you enthrone the pairs of opposites and invite them to fight it out on the battleground of your logic, you live under the law of the second chapter of Genesis. The knowledge of good and evil and confusion is inevitable. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, says the apostle. And that instability is exactly this oscillation between hoped-for sign and dreaded sign. Now I make a promise, and I make it for today. Not a life plan, not a 10-year prophecy. Today, the next right step can stand revealed without fear, because guidance under grace is not a chain of predictions. It is presence recognized and then obeyed in simplicity. Take, therefore, no thought for the morrow, not because tomorrow is unimportant, but because your only doorway into it is obedience now. When the mind ceases from its chase, you discover that the lamp at your feet, not the floodlight to the horizon, is already lit. How, then, shall we work? You start the treatment with the word God. You establish consciously and categorically that there is one presence, one power, one cause, and that this one constitutes your being, your mind, your capacity, your action. And simultaneously, you recognize the nature of error, that all this pressure, these deadlines, these options clamoring for verdicts are not powers, not laws, not causes, but appearances supported only by the belief in two powers. This is part one. Then part two, you surrender into stillness, not a passive vacancy, but holy non-resistance. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. You do not outline, you do not bargain, you do not peek to see if the feeling is perfect yet. You wait until assurance comes, and it will come as quiet authority as the simple next step that asks no fanfare. Don't think you can turn this on or off like your water tap, to be frantic for 6 days and mystic for 5 minutes on Sunday. This is a way of life. But I tell you, even now, in the thick of your options, if you will lay down the hunt and begin with God, the noise will subside enough for guidance to be what it has always been. God, knowing himself as your very mind, your very willingness, your very next right activity. This is really it. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. You begin with the word God. Do not begin with a spreadsheet, with the pro and con columns, with a text message, with a diagnosis, with a family vote. You begin with the word God, because until cause is acknowledged, every attempt at guidance is only the rearrangement of effect. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. If you accept that, even for this moment, you have already cut the root from the tree of anxiety. You have not solved a problem. You have removed the belief that a problem stands as power before you. You have not chosen between doors A and B. You have consented that only one cause governs both hinges and hallway. You start there. You do not ask for light and then light a match of human reasoning to speed the dawn. You acknowledge that light is, that God is, and you let that recognition be the only sun in your sky. What is the meaning of God in our work? Not a tribal deity, not a cosmic consultant summoned under pressure. God is omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. Therefore, God is the only presence where you are now. God is the only power operative in the circumstance that seems to face you. God is the only mind knowing what is to be known and revealing what is to be revealed. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. There is no law in any appearance because God is the only law. I am the Lord, and there is none else, says the prophet. And I say to you, if you accept even a fraction of that, you are no longer a hunter of signs, but a witness to oneness. You cannot be led under two kingdoms. If you keep one foot in the camp of omnipotence and the other in the camp of contingency, you will limp. But when you begin with God, you have already come out from among them and become separate. You have declared jurisdiction. Then what is guidance? Guidance is not personal mind counseling, personal mind. Guidance is not your bright idea winning the debate with your dark fear. Guidance is God the One, mind evidencing itself as your present awareness. In Him we live and move and have our being. That is not poetry, that is practice. To be led is to discover that the Father that dwelleth in me, He doeth the works, and He knoweth the way, and that the way is not miles out ahead, but here, as consciousness revealing itself to itself. When you start with God, you are not trying to get God into the picture. You are consenting to the fact that there is only God in the picture, and the picture is your consciousness seeing clearly. Let me give you a form you can carry, not as a charm, but as a door you know how to open. God constitutes my being, therefore nothing can add to me, nothing can take from me. God constitutes my life, therefore nothing can quicken it or dull it. It is life being itself. God constitutes my intelligence. Therefore, my capacity to know is God's knowing, not memory straining, not nerves guessing. God constitutes my direction. Therefore, I am not a compass spinning. I am awareness at rest, proceeding as right activity. God constitutes my safety. Therefore, I am not negotiating with danger. I am recognizing the absence of any second power. God constitutes my supply. Therefore, decision is not a hunt for buckets to catch rain. It is standing in the fact of the fountain. You may say it quietly, you may say it once, you may say it again and again, not to persuade God, but to establish in your own consciousness what has always been true. And here is the correction I must make, and I make it because I have watched too many try to turn this work into a lever. Do not attempt to flip this on like your water tap when the heat is on, and then return to mortal outlining when the sky looks clear. Don't think you can be under grace at 9 a.m. and under law at noon. This is a way of living. You begin with God when you open your eyes. You begin with God when you answer the phone. You begin with God when you sign the contract and when you do not sign it. You begin with God when you are hungry for results and when you are bored by routine. The recognition of one cause must displace the whole habit of personal engineering, for as long as you outline, you testify that a second cause exists to be managed or avoided. Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is God. In that one recognition, you have refused the courtroom of good and evil, and you have accepted the shepherd's rod and staff. So do not ask me which choice is safer, which route is faster. I would say, begin with God. Sit down if you must, stand up if you must, close your eyes if you must, but begin with God. Acknowledge one presence, one power, one law, until the nervous habit of choosing subsides into the assurance that choosing is not yours. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And when that is true to you, the next step will not be an argument. It will be obedience without strain, because has already determined effect. This is really it. What is it that makes decisions tormenting? I ask it because unless you see the root, you will prune branches forever. What is the actual sting and the pressure to choose? It is the belief that there are competing powers, good outcomes and evil outcomes, fighting for your life, and that you stand as referee on a field where blows are real and final. That is the belief of the second chapter of Genesis, the knowledge of good and evil, and the moment you accept it, you have stepped out of the garden of effortless being into the courtroom where every thought is evidence and every hour is cross-examination. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. That instability is not temperament, it is the wobble of divided allegiance. Now, what do I call mortal mind? I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Mortal mind is precisely the acceptance of duality. It forecasts catastrophe and calls the forecast wisdom. It idolizes success and calls the idolatry prudence. It swings between dread and desire and crowns both as powers to be appeased. That is mortal mind belief in two powers. The belief that effects have authority, the belief that circumstances can legislate law to the one infinite cause, but there is no power in any effect because God is all power. Hear that as law and not as poetry. Fear has no law. Confusion has no intelligence. Delay has no authority. Time cannot bar the door to the infinite. Deadlines are not deities. Trends are not thrones. I am the Lord, and there is none else. If there is none else, then what is the threat? An appearance nourished by belief. What is the lure? An appearance flattered by belief. Remove the belief, and the appearance loses its food. Do you see how anxiety pretends to be responsibility? The mind whispers, if I worry enough, I will be safe. If I chase down every consequence in advance, I will be faithful. But worry is only worship of two masters. No man can serve two masters, said the master. And I would add, anxiety is your incense on the altar of evil as power. When the Christ says, take no thought for your life, he is not endorsing indifference. He is commanding a single recognition of one cause. Perfect love casteth out fear, not because love argues better, but because love recognizes no second will, no hostile law, no prowling alternative to God. To withdraw authority from fear is not negligence, it is fidelity to oneness. If you swear allegiance to one king and then run errands for a pretender, do not be surprised when your days are divided. Let me tell you what I have witnessed so often that I can no longer count the times. A man came to me with two offers, one bright with salary and prestige, the other humble but steady, and his head was hot with analysis, his nights busy with projections and bargains. He said, if I choose wrong, I ruin the future. If I choose right, I secure it. That is mortal mind in full costume. Future as tyrant, choice as savior, self as strategist. We did not add thought to thought. We recognize the nature of error. There is no power in these effects. We named fear as lawless, confusion as mindless, delay as without authority, and then we were still, be still and know that I am God. After the stillness, without trumpet, without omen, came a simple inner assurance, not about 10 years of prosperity or 5 promotions, but about a phone call that afternoon to decline both offers and meet a colleague for coffee. From that coffee came the work appointed for him. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, not a floodlight to the horizon. Under grace, the one next step is always the form that guidance takes. Now, if error is not power, what shall we do with it? We do not fight it with more thought. We do not enlist our nerves as soldiers. We do not debate shadows. We withdraw belief. We take our hands off the 2 scales that mortal mind keeps tipping, and we refuse to weigh appearances against God. We return to stillness, not as a tactic, but as truth. The Lord, He is God. There is none else. In that holy non-resistance, the forked road that terrified you dissolves because it never had law to stand. There is only the way, and the way is the mind that is God revealing itself as your next right activity. Confusion is not a sign you need more thinking. It is the symptom that you have believed in 2 powers. Cease from that belief, and you will find that the noise subsides of itself, because there was nothing sustaining it but your consent. Wait, speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth, and the assurance that is already present will announce itself without your engineering. This is really it. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Under law, you live by forecasts, and you pay your tithes to fear. What do I mean by under law? In the practical, everyday sense, it is this. If I choose wrong, I will pay. If I choose right, I will win. It is the inner accountant tallying penalties and prizes, the nervous bargain, the vow, I will think hard enough, I will be moral enough, I will reason cleverly enough, and then the universe will reward me with a sign. That is law, cause, and effect, good and evil, the treadmill of Genesis 2. Under law, you are your own small cause trying to force effects into line. You are the judge, the jury, the executioner, and the prisoner. And you grow weary because you are attempting to produce what cannot be produced, the revelation of God as guidance. Now hear me. Grace is another government entirely. Grace is not a reward for mental strain. Grace is not wages for moral bargaining. Grace is the actual presence of God evidencing itself when you stop asserting a second power. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Guidance under grace is not earned by correct reasoning. It is revealed by the cessation of self-reasoning. It is not the prize for your arguments. It is the fruit of your surrender. I can of mine own self do nothing, said the Master. That is not humility as ornament. It is the key that unlocks guidance as grace. When the sense of a personal will engineering outcomes relaxes, the one will that is God appears as quiet inner authority, and the next step stands revealed as inevitable, simple, and free of dread. Someone will ask, if I do not think it through, do I then become passive? No. Grace is not passivity. Grace is receptivity. Under passivity, you slump and call it trust. Under grace, you take your shoes from off your feet because the ground where you stand is holy. You are alert, attentive, and surrendered. Wait, Lord, thy servant heareth. Do you notice the posture? It is not coercion. It is not, Lord, listen, I have 3 options and a deadline. It is reception. And reception is followed by obedience. When assurance comes, there is nothing limp about it. It moves your feet, it opens your mouth, it directs your hand. For it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. That is grace, God as your willing and God as your doing. You might say, but is there not some part for me to play? Yes, and I will not let you miss it. Under grace, there is a twofold practice. First, truth recognition. We acknowledge God as the only presence, power, cause, and law, and we categorically deny, the belief in good and evil as competing authorities. We refuse to enthrone effects. We refuse to call fear a prophet, confusion a teacher, time a tyrant. There is no power in any effect, because God is all power. This is our conscious work, and it is not to persuade God, it is to cleanse our lens of the belief in two powers. Second, we become still. We stop doing. We stop outlining. We stop rehearsing speeches to imaginary judges. We say, "Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth," and then we listen without peeking. We do not reach for a feeling to certify the answer. We wait for assurance to announce itself as quiet inevitability. Under law, you try to manufacture a green light by thinking harder. Under grace, the light appears where you stand because the light is already present and you have ceased to eclipse it with self-will. Under law, you promise better behavior in exchange for a sign. Under grace, you discover that the sign is the shepherd's voice and that obedience is your natural gait. My yoke is easy and my burden is light, not because nothing is asked of you, but because what is asked is not strain. It is acquiescence to what already is. When the assurance comes, you will find no courtroom to reopen, no jury to convince. You will find only the simple next step that does not argue. Do not think you can run on law all morning and step into grace at 4 p.m. by reciting a formula. This is really it. Live now in the government of grace. Begin with the recognition of God as one, deny the second power, and wait, and when the assurance comes, as it surely does under grace, move in it promptly, quietly, and without reopening the debate. Guidance is not your product. Guidance is God revealing himself as your very mind, your very willingness, your very next right activity. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. Every case is treated the same. Do not imagine a separate technique for career and another for relationship, one for health and another for money, one for timing and another for relocation or conflict. Whether a doctor's report has startled you, a contract sits on your desk, a child waits for your answer, or a city calls your name, every case is treated the same. You start the treatment with the word God, and you refuse a second cause. Then you become still, and you refuse a second will. That is our method, and you will not improve upon it by inserting your cleverness. Part 1, Truth Recognition. You consciously know the truth of God. You do not recite it as liturgy. You behold it as law. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, one presence, not two, one power, not contending forces, one intelligence, not a committee within your head. Therefore, God constitutes your being. Say it until it is not words but awareness. God constitutes my life. God constitutes my mind. God constitutes my capacity to know and to do. God constitutes my safety and sufficiency. God constitutes my direction. In him we live and move and have our being. If we live in him, we do not live in pressure. If we move in him, we are not shoved by deadlines. If our being is in him, we are not at the mercy of trends or tempers. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. Effects do not legislate. Appearances do not enthrone themselves. Conditions do not become causes. I am the Lord, and there is none else. Let that none else remove every mask that fear wears. Part 1 continued. You consciously know the nature of error. What is this clamor that says decide quickly or perish, choose perfectly or pay? It is suggestion, not substance. It is appearance, not authority. It is the ancient serpent speech of Genesis 2, the knowledge of good and evil pretending to be wisdom. Name it rightly. Fear is not power, it is belief. Pressure is not law. It is momentum in imagination. Mental noise is not intelligence. It is static in the receiver. Deny categorically their jurisdiction, not by arguing with them, but by withdrawing consent. Why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is, God. By that same token, there is none evil with power. There is no rival will with throne, only God. When you have established this in your own consciousness, you have completed the first part of your treatment. Part 2, holy stillness. Now you wait. You do not wait like a beggar at a window pane. You wait like a servant before the king. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. You do not bargain. If you give me this, I will promise that. You do not rehearse consequences as if omniscience required your scenarios. You do not reach for a feeling to certify an answer. You rest in receptivity. Be still and know that I am God. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. This is not passivity. It is obedience to the fact that guidance is God's self-revealing, not your self-straining, wait, Lord, thy servant heareth, and keep hands off the wheel of imagination. What are you listening for? Not a dramatic voice and not a vision to parade to your friends. You are listening for the settling, the gentle cessation of push and pull, the moment the question loses its bite. You will find without trumpet and without omen a quiet inevitability. A simple next step will stand where the tangle stood. It may be a phone call, a postponement, a signature, a declined invitation, a walk, a line to write, a silence to keep. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, not a floodlight to the horizon. That lamp, when it is shining, does not argue. It does not require a jury. It does not reopen the courtroom of pros and cons. It carries within it its own authority, an ease, a rightness, a lack of drama. That is the fruit of grace. Do not think you can hasten this by peeking, by testing the door every 30 seconds to see if it will open for your plan. Do not think you can bully assurance into appearing with more adjectives. Guidance comes after truth recognition in the silence where personal will stops pushing. Every case, career, relationship, health, money, timing, relocation, conflict, every case bows to the same government. One cause realized, one will received. Begin there, abide there, and when the assurance comes, move in it promptly and quietly, for it is God as your very mind revealing its own next right activity. This is really it. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. We will not leave this at theory. We will practice now in real time, and you will prove to yourself that guidance is not something you manufacture by intensity. It is what remains when belief in two powers is denied a throne and the mind becomes still. This is not visualization. This is not positive thinking. This is the yielding of thought to the presence of God already here. Be still and know that I am God. If you can set aside what is in your hands, sit upright, and be willing to let the next 3 minutes belong to God alone. First, name the fork. Without speech, in one sentence only, state the decision that has been agitating you. One sentence. No story. No pro and con list. No self-accusation. No rehearsal of consequences. No history lesson about last time you chose wrong. Simply name it and stop. As soon as a sentence forms, refuse the spiral that tries to follow. Cut the current. You are not here to argue a case before a nervous judge. You are here to acknowledge a king. Take no thought for the morrow, the Master said. Obey it now. One sentence, then silence. Second, declare truth quietly, not to persuade God, but to establish in your own awareness what is eternally so. Say within yourself, God is here. God is the only intelligence. God constitutes my being. Therefore, the right activity is present as revelation, not as result of strain. God constitutes my mind. Therefore, capacity to know is God's knowing, not a guessing contest. God constitutes my way. Therefore, there is no separate path to be hunted. There is only the way revealing itself as I rest. I am the Lord, and there is none else. Let that none else fill the whole horizon of your thought. God is, and there is no other cause. Third, deny error. I do not mean wrestle with it. I mean withdraw its credentials. Say within yourself, clearly and without temper, fear is not a power. Time is not a power. Other people's opinions are not a power. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. Deadlines do not legislate. Trends do not enthrone themselves. Risks do not reign. Worry is not wisdom. It is worship offered to a God that does not exist. No man can serve two masters. I serve one. Under that one, suggestions of catastrophe or glittering promises of ego are but appearances, and appearances do not bind the sons of God. Let the denials be firm and few. Then stop. You have cleaned the lens. Fourth, enter stillness. For 30 to 60 seconds, be quiet. No fixing. No asking again. No testing the door to see if it is open. Set a modest watch if you must, but take hands off the wheel of imagination. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. You are not waiting for fireworks. You are consenting to presence. In this holy non-resistance, you will notice the mental weather begin to settle. Do not reach for a feeling to certify the moment. Simply be. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Fifth, receive the seed. When the noise thins, and it will, you will often not receive a 10-year map or a headline. You will notice what remains. A modest, practical next step, standing where the tangle stood. It may be to make one phone call. It may be to postpone. It may be to walk around the block. It may be to decline politely without explanation. It may be to write one paragraph or to remain silent through supper. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, not a floodlight to the horizon. A lamp illumines the next plank on the bridge. Take that plank without speechifying or reopening the courtroom. I have watched this in rooms and airplanes and kitchens. A young father once sat with me, options stacked like crates and deadlines like sirens. We named the fork in one sentence. We declared truth. We denied the counterfeit powers of fear, time, and reputation. We were still. And then, nothing dramatic, only a clear, unargued awareness. Send one email to decline both offers and ask for a short, unpaid leave. From that single act, without fanfare, came the appointment that fit him like skin. Grace seldom shouts. It simply stands. Now, do not break the spell by darting back into analysis. If a simple step has appeared, take it humbly, quietly. If nothing has yet formed, remain at peace. The silence is not emptiness. Waiting is activity under grace. The soil does not manufacture the seed, it receives it. Inner assurance is not manufactured. It is what remains when fear and prediction are denied reality, and you wait. My sheep hear my voice, and they follow. They do not negotiate with it. This is really it. How then does guidance feel, and how does it not? I say this with a great deal of seriousness because many of you have mistaken compulsion for leading and anxiety for faithfulness. Compulsion is urgent, punishing, noisy. It comes with a stopwatch in one hand and a gavel in the other. It says, now or else. It shames, it flatters, it threatens, it peppers you with what ifs and drags you to the courtroom to rehear the case for the 100th time. Guidance is of another nature. Guidance is steady, simple, unforced. It does not shove, it does not bargain, it does not collect interest while you hesitate. It appears as quiet authority, a rightness that does not need to argue its way into reality because it is reality announcing itself. God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. If confusion authored it, it did not come of God. What is this peace by which you may test it? Do not mistake peace for lethargy, for a couch in the sun with no desire to move. Peace is not laziness. Peace is the absence of two powers battling in consciousness. It is the end of the civil war. When you have acknowledged, one, I am the Lord, and there is none else, the friction ceases because there is nothing left to push against. The peace of God, which passeth all understanding, is not soporific. It is directive. It carries the motion of right activity within itself. You will find that when the inner assurance is present, there is peace and there is movement, no strain, no trumpet motion, as natural as breath. Let the peace of God rule in your hearts. Do you hear it? Rule, not advise. Peace rules. When peace rules, the debate is closed. Some will ask, but if the step that appears as small or humble, can that be God? Would not God lead me into something worthy of my gifts? Hear me. True guidance does not flatter the ego. It will not decorate you with a cape so that your neighbors may applaud your spirituality. It will often be smaller, quieter, more hidden than the mind's heroic plan, because grace does not require costume. When thou doest alms, let not thy left hand know what thy right hand doeth. That same humility marks authentic leading. It may instruct you to write one line and mail it without fanfare, to decline with no explanation, to show up in an unnoticed place and do the faithful, ordinary thing. And in that obedience, you discover magnitude disguised as modesty. The kingdom seed is small to sight, its harvest is not loud. Why, then, does guidance so often come as one step? Because omniscience is not a map maker for mortal fear. The mind wants certainty for the whole road so that it may resume control and worship its plans. Revelation supplies what is needed now because the lamp, that is the Word, illumines unto my feet, not to the horizon. That is not withholding. That is protection. It spares you from re-entering the courtroom to litigate 10 future bridges. Under grace, you live plank to plank, and you find that each plank appears under your foot as you move in peace. Give us this day our daily bread. Daily bread, not lifetime storage. Daily light, not floodlight. And it is enough, because God is the supply of the step as well as the step. Here is a corrective I must give, and I give it plainly. Do not seek signs and omens and coincidences to authorize what inner assurance did not sanction. A wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, said the Master, not to rebuke miracles, but to rebuke superstition. If you scour license plates for secret codes, if you tally repeated numbers as permission slips, if you wait for 3 birds on a fence post to confirm a hunch, you are still enthroning effects. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. When inner assurance is present, the tree may whisper or the sky may be mute. It makes no difference. Authority is not outside you. It is the presence announcing itself as your own consciousness. And my sheep hear my voice. They do not hire omens as translators. Let me tell you how this is borne out in the plain light of day. I have sat with men and women who, under the spell of zeal, mistook adrenaline for anointing. Their words rushed. Their bodies leaned forward as if the future were pulling on a rope. They reported excitement, confirmation everywhere, open doors. We did not scold. We withdrew recognition from the theater. We returned to one. We denied the second power. We became still. And in that stillness, the pressure deflated like air from the bellows, and what remained was simple and unglamorous. Call your mother, cancel the trip, apologize, finish the work already on your desk, rest. Each act carried peace. Each act bore fruit. The earlier excitement had required constant feeding. The guidance required only obedience, so you will learn to recognize the marks. Compulsion is a prosecutor, guidance is a shepherd. Compulsion threatens outcomes, guidance reveals presence. Compulsion needs applause and signs, guidance is content with the rule of peace. Test everything by oneness. If two powers are still wrestling in you, wait. Do not mistake the wrestling for faithfulness. Return to one. Be still and know that I am God. When the knowing is present, you will not need to advertise it to yourself with omens or to others with speeches. You will move as one under authority, and the step you take will carry its own quiet benediction. This is really it. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. When you first enter stillness, do not be surprised if the first voice you hear is restlessness. The mind, accustomed to being foreman, will stamp its foot and demand a job. It will say, nothing is happening, and then volunteer projects, let us reopen the file. Let us count consequences one more time. Let us at least feel something to prove that God is present. That restlessness is not a sign of failure. It is withdrawal from control. It is the momentum of self-will running out of track. Do not treat it as a prophet. Let it pass like wind against a closed window. Here is the mistake I wish to correct. You imagine that waiting is inactivity and that the silence is a void in which you must toss pebbles to make rings. Under grace, the deepest adjustment occurs beneath words. The kingdom of God cometh not with observation, not by your meter readings of feeling or your graphs of goose flesh. So is the kingdom of God. As if a man should cast seed into the ground, and the seed should spring and grow up, he knoweth not how. He knoweth not, how do you hear? The earth bringeth forth fruit of herself, first the blade, then the ear, then the full corn. In waiting, the soil of consciousness is loosening its clods of fear. The roots of two-power belief are being exposed. The inner weather is changing. You do not see it with the senses, and you do not need to. There is no power in any effect because God is all power. Therefore, you need not chase effects in order to certify the presence. Do not measure spiritual receptivity by immediate sensations. Do not require a temperature in your palm, a thrill in your chest, a word in your ear, a vision behind your eyelids. A wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign because it has not learned to honor the unseen governance of grace. We are not treated by signs. We are treated by God realized. We are not healed by tingles. We are healed by the cessation of a second power in our belief. The Master did not say, feel and know. He said, be still and know that I am God. Knowledge precedes and outlives feeling, and often it is without ornament. What then shall you do in the dry moment when nothing seems to move? Return to one statement, God is, and let it stand without argument. Not God in my deadline, not God in my reputation, not God in my children's fear. God is. I am the Lord, and there is none else. Sit with that like a sentinel who relieves himself of all other weapons. Resist the temptation to embroider it. Resist the urge to peer around it for a result. Say it once, know it deeply, and then wait. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. If fear chirps, do not negotiate. Quietly withdraw recognition. Fear is not a power. Time is not a power. Outcomes are not powers, for God is all power. Then resume the holy stillness. You are not making anything happen. You are consenting to what is. And hear this reassurance, for I have watched it in sick rooms and train stations and midnight kitchens. Even when no sentence forms and no plan appears, the fear is dissolving. You may think nothing happened, but if the inner storm has lost one knot of wind, guidance is already at work. Perfect love casteth out fear, and as fear is cast out, the shepherd's voice is no longer drowned. Waiting is not emptiness. It is the court adjourning, the bailiff clearing the gallery, the noise dismissed so that the judge may be heard. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Strengthening the heart is guidance. The shrinking of dread is guidance. The end of the hurry is guidance. And when the quiet has done its hidden work, you will find not a drama, not a parade, but a simple next step standing where the panic stood. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet. A lamp, not a stadium light. Allow the lamp to appear by refusing to idolize the darkness. God is. Let that be enough, and it will be more than enough. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. When the lamp appears, take the step it illumines and no other. Do not demand the universe. Receive the plank. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a lamp, by its very nature, governs a step, not a saga. Guidance expresses as immediate right activity, plain, workable, here and now obedience. It will look like a phone call to make, a document to complete, an apology to offer, a rest to take, a boundary to set, a meeting to postpone, a walk to clear the fog, a single piece of information to request. Do not despise modest instruction. Whatsoever he saith unto you, do it. That is not religiosity. That is sanity under one cause. You will find that when assurance is present, obedience is natural. It does not require self-violence. There is no inner wrestling match because the courtroom has been dismissed. The motion of the step carries its own peace. God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. And when peace authors a step, the body follows without argument. You are not acting to manufacture an outcome. You are consenting to an activity that is already God, being God as your intelligence and your motion. God constitutes your being. Therefore, God constitutes your next right activity. There is no power in any effect, neither deadline, nor rumor, nor pressure, because God is all power. Therefore, you do not act under threat. You act under grace. Allow me to be very plain about modesty. Sometimes the step is to stop. Sometimes it is to wait until 3 p.m. Sometimes it is to gather one fact and no more. Sometimes it is to write the first paragraph and close the file. Do not say, that cannot be God. It is too small. The Master healed with simple commands. Stretch forth thine hand. Go, wash in the pool of Siloam. Arise, take up thy bed, and walk. Each was an immediate act, not a grand design. So too with you. If the word is rest, then rest is holy. If the word is boundary, then boundary is holy. If the word is call now, then a humble phone call is holy. Faith without works is dead, not because works purchase grace, but because grace, when realized, moves. God now against reversal. for the mind will attempt it. No sooner does a step appear than the old habit rushes to reopen the case. But what if this offends? What if there is a better tactic? Shouldn't I poll 3 more people? What if tomorrow reveals a superior option? This is not prudence. This is the return of 2 powers. The remedy is not more argument. The remedy is the same 2-part work. Return to 1. Deny the second power. Enter stillness. Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth. Let the peace that authored the step reassert its government. Then move. Let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. Do not add speeches to your own soul. Do not step and then litigate the step you have taken. You will discover a rhythm here, assurance, action, quiet like breath. It is not a technique for emergencies. It is the way of living under grace. The same lamp that guides the signature on a contract guides the tone of an email. The same peace that stills you before a diagnosis stills you before a calendar. This is really it. One next step, taken without reopening the courtroom of the mind, and then another, and then another. In this government, you do not become passive. You become precise. You do not hurry. You obey. You do not outline. You attend. Grace is not erratic. Grace is a presence, and presence recognized expresses as immediate right activity. If you will practice this, your days will uncoil. You will look back and see not a blueprint you drafted, but a path that revealed itself under your feet. Give us this day our daily bread, daily light, daily step, daily sufficiency, and you will learn to trust the modesty of God's ways. The grand announcement will rarely be needed because the quiet step will have already opened the right door. My sheep hear my voice, and they follow. They do not negotiate. They do not demand a parade. They do not consult omens. They walk. And as you walk in peace, you will find that the next step is always here on time, and the universe so feared was never your burden to carry, for God is all in all. I say this with a great deal of seriousness. You cannot spend a day judging, fearing, competing, gossiping, and then imagine that at 10 o'clock in the evening you will flick a switch, find a chair, and have heaven on tap. Don't think you can turn this on or off like your water tap. There are no office hours with God except 24 hours a day. Pray without ceasing, the Scripture says. Watch and pray, the Master admonished. That is not a pietistic burden. It is a description of how guidance actually functions. Guidance is not a telegram delivered to a noisy address. Guidance is the natural speech of a consciousness that has refused a second power all day long, so that when quiet settles, there is nothing contrary to hear. What then is this 24-hour life? It is not an impossible marathon. It is a rhythm of micro pauses that turn the mind Godward before the noise accumulates. If you have 3 opportunities during the day, and I say this plainly, take them, stop for 60 seconds, and acknowledge God is here. Not God and my agenda. Not God and the client. God is. In Him we live and move and have our being. Let that single fact rinse the mind of hurry. Say within yourself, speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth, and do nothing more. Do this upon waking. Do this at midday. Do this before you enter your home at night. Abide in me, and I in you. Abiding is not dramatic. It is frequent, faithful, returning. In those tiny obediences, the sediment of fear does not get to settle, and when a choice arrives, it finds a clear pool rather than a stirred-up pond. Now hear the corrective that must be given. Non-judgment is not courtesy. It is preparation for guidance. Judge not, that ye be not judged. Every condemnation of another, every indictment of yourself is a rehearsal of two powers in your own consciousness and becomes the courtroom noise that drowns the still small voice. Withdraw from the habit of inner prosecution. Refuse the gossip. Refuse the mental editorializing that tries to fix the world by blame. Let him that is without sin among you cast the first stone. You will not guide a stone and hear a shepherd at the same time. Let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay. Keep your word few and your heart soft, and you will find that answers present themselves without argument, because you have not maintained an inner argument against the world. As you live from oneness in this way, you will notice a holy consequence. Decision, panic recedes. If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. When there is only one recognized, one presence, one power, one cause, life no longer appears as a battlefield of competing forces demanding instant mastery. There is no power in any effect, because God is all power. Therefore, deadlines lose their throne, trends lose their spell, opinions lose their gavel. Choices cease to be trials with sentences. They become extensions of an already governed peace. My yoke is easy and my burden is light, because the yoke of two powers has been refused before the crisis performs its theater. Do not mistake this for laxity. Discipline is required, and I set the expectation gently but firmly. Establish regular meditation upon waking and before sleep, and keep those 3 pauses as sacraments through the day. Do not wait for emergencies to practice presence. If fear rises, deny it authority at once. Fear is not a power, time is not a power, conditions are not powers, God is all power. Then be still, and know that I am God. Do not look for fireworks, look for faithfulness. If you will cultivate this 2-4-hour receptivity, you will find that guidance does not need to be forced in a crisis, because you will have dwelt in the atmosphere where guidance is native. Men ought always to pray and not to faint. Always, not anxiously, not theatrically, always as a way of breathing. This is really it. Live today as one under one. Refuse the second power in thought and speech. Keep the short appointments with stillness, and you will discover that when you need a word, the word is already ruling, and the next step has already appeared before you. Ask